welcome everybody. Thank you so much for being here. Those of you that are online, those of you that are here with us in person.
Hey, Austin, I'm hearing you, but you're not coming through clearly. It's coming through a little muffled. There's almost like there's background noise that's muffling you a little bit.
Okay, give me 1 second. What about now?
That's better. I definitely can hear you more clearly.
Okay. If at any point you can't hear me, stop me, please. Thank you everyone for being here today. My name is Austin Gray. I'm the Assistant Director of DelDOT Planning, overseeing our statewide and regional planning section. Thank you for joining us for our presentation stakeholder meeting 1 on the coastal corridor studies for SR 16, US 9, SR 24. Before we get into the presentation itself, restrooms are out this door to the back to the right. There's also a water fountain out there. If you find yourself needing something to munch on, there are snacks out this door to the left for purchase. With that, we move into our presentation. The speaker in this room or the microphone in this room is on the ceiling. And it's very sensitive. So if you are flipping through papers, you are having side conversations, it will be picked up. It will be on the recording. We will hear you for sure. So please be mindful of that. If that is what you choose to do. So DelDOT begins all of our presentations with our mission statement to provide excellent transportation for every trip, every mood, every dollar, and every one. This is a guiding framework for all the work that we do. We also start all of our presentations with the most recent traffic fatality numbers. You'll see as of today, we are at 94 fatalities year to date, which is about a 15% decline from where we were at this time last year, 19% decline from this time 2 years ago. So those numbers are trending in the right direction. The goal is always 0 fatalities on our roadways. And hopefully through our adoption of things like the safe system approach, which you'll see on the next slide, those numbers will continue to go down. The safe system approach is a formal policy adopted by the department earlier this year that models a national approach to really be more proactive in how we're viewing safety. From the side of the circle, you see the principles of the approach. In the center of the circle, you'll see there's elements of those outcomes. Everything we work towards here is collaborative, right? So DelDOT in collaboration with our other state agency partners, in collaboration with our county and municipality partners, in collaboration with the state police, are working to achieve these goals and implement these objectives and elements in everything that we're doing. Our agenda for today, we're going to walk you through a recap of the coastal corridor study so far, talk about some of our network needs in the area, and talk about some potential mitigation strategies. We'll move into next steps, have a period of public comment, and then close the meeting. If anyone from the public is here or online, we will have a time for you to speak at the end. This is a meeting, Andrew will say this as well, but this is a meeting for the stakeholder committee, stakeholder members that are here. We will have time for any public comment at the end of the meetings. And Andrew, I will turn it back over to you.
Yeah, and again, hi everyone. I'm Andrew Bing. I facilitate both the Transportation Advisory Group in Milton as well as the Coastal Corridors Monitoring Committee. It's good to see everyone virtually here today, and thank you for taking the time to join us. As I said, we do have a lot to go over today. So let me get into some of my introductory slides, and then we'll get into the more substantive parts of the presentation. I assume someone's advancing the slides from the room. If you can go to the next slide. There we go. So again, welcome to the TAG members as well as the CCMC members. If you're in the room, I know we have a few people in the room with us. Pick your spots and raise a hand or interrupt at the right time. If you're joining us virtually, again, you can raise your hand if you want to jump in for any questions or comments. Use that raise the hand icon on the screen. Or again, if there's if you feel like you need to politely interrupt the conversation, do it politely, I guess. As Austin said, we will save time at the end for any members of the public. We would ask you, if you are a member of the public, i.e. you're not a member of the TAG or the CCMC, to wait until the end, and we will provide an opportunity for you to make a comment at the end. Our project team are all represented here in this meeting. We've got the DelDOT, obviously, the statewide planning group. We've got the Office of State Planning Coordination. We've got Sussex County Planning and Zoning, as well as our consultant team who's supporting all of them through our work. So you will hear from a variety of us. I am not, this might make everyone happy, but I am not going to have everyone introduce themselves. It would just take up too much time. But I do want to flash some slides up here. First, representing the Coastal Corridors Monitoring Committee, you can see several names. We're going through there. Go to the next slide. Great. Very a great group of stakeholders on the Coastal Corridors Monitoring Committee, and additionally our technical advisory or transportation advisory group with Milton, and we've got 2 slides there as well. And we're hoping as many of these people have joined us today. What I will ask is, whether you're in the room or joining us virtually, if you do come on to ask a question, make a comment, if you would just introduce yourselves as you come on so we know who is making that comment. The role of each of our stakeholders is to help us set project priorities, different maybe projects for different groups, but nonetheless, through your input, your feedback, your comments and so forth, we expect and hope that you will help us set our priorities as we go forward. We want you to advocate and promote recommendations from earlier phases of this project. There are multiple recommendations out there, and we look to you all to help move things forward. We want to work together to find solutions to our transportation challenges. And we also look to each of you to help us get the word out. It used to be a lot harder to get the word out 10, 20 years ago. Now it's a lot easier to get the word out, but there's a lot more distractions out there. It's harder to get people to actually focus on our communications. And we find it a lot better if each of you can help us in doing that. So when we promote something, we certainly look to each of you to help us promote that. So thank you. In terms of our meeting purpose, for what we're trying to do today, we are going to share a lot of data and insights to support our Coastal Corridor study and the related efforts. So as you have seen, as in prior meetings, we do try to provide a lot of supporting data. We want to discuss community priorities and trade-offs and next steps for our corridor studies, and better understand how partner initiatives, whether it's land use, policy, collaboration, can connect with and be better informed by the Coastal Corridors work. So yes, we're going to provide information, but we do want you all to engage with us today as best as possible. So we've got a couple priority initiatives that we're working on. The first is, and this is all under the Coastal Corridors umbrella, but the first is kind of re-envisioning SR 16 in Milton. This was recommendation 16-9 through 16-12 in the Coastal Corridors report. So, Milton has an interest in re-looking at, re-envisioning what SR 16 through Milton as a mixed-use main street that serves all modes of traffic and supports local businesses. Widening of 16 through Milton is not necessary for accommodating the current and projected volumes of vehicles. However, providing additional ped bike crossings to support the most multimodal connectivity may have an adverse impact on this through traffic. So that's kind of the challenge right there. So this corridor study is necessary to determine what that long-term vision for SR 16 and assess whether an alternate route is necessary for through traffic. So that's kind of the big question that's out there right now. How do we do it, and does an alternate route make sense? Going on to our next priority initiative, is looking at US 9. This is recommendations 9-5 through 9-6, as well as G-5 through G-8. So probably not a surprise to many of you at this meeting, but US 9 and SR 5 is the most congested signalized intersection in the planning area. And by 2050, it's projected to be at or near capacity without any improvements. The 9 corridor east of SR 5 has high traffic throughout the year. And again, the 2050 traffic projections are at a threshold where dualization should be considered. However, there are significant constraints at the SR 5 intersection. So any study that we're doing in terms of widening US 9 has to understand the feasibility of widening at that intersection. So, and there are significant development pressures along the corridor, and land development regulations should be addressed to ensure sufficient public right-of-way is set aside to accommodate future infrastructure needs. So those are kind of 2 priority initiatives that, a lot of what we're going to talk about today, a lot of the data we're going to share is going to be tied into those initiatives. As we go to our next slide, so what could be some potential mitigation? So we put this slide in here just to kind of make sure everyone understands as we're going through the data, as we're going through the analysis, and there's a lot of, getting in the weeds, even though we've tried to keep it best we could, but we wanted to at least make sure you knew where we were heading potentially. So potential mitigation. One of the things that we want to talk about is we've through the coastal corridors work, we would use the word, bypass. Should there be a bypass? Should there not be a bypass? We're kind of rebranding that to talk about, regional connections. So what we're looking at is what could be some regional connections in the area. So in order to advance the coastal corridor priority initiatives, a transportation risk assessment is necessary. The mapping we're going to show today establishes existing and anticipated future risks, and the same methods will be used to assess the potential mitigation strategies shown on this map. And so, these are kind of going to be decision support tools, but you can see with the purple dots and the arrows on either end, what could be some regional connector ideas. So you see something north of 16, you see something connecting 16 to US 9. You also see a regional connector going from 9 and reconnecting back on 9. So these will be the things that, we're going to be consistently looking at. And today is one more sort of step in that direction. And Leah, before I go to our next slide, is there anything you wanted to add to anything I shared right there?
Yeah, so I think this map is interesting, and I want to emphasize today we're really focusing on the baseline conditions given the transportation network now. Meeting 2, which is going to be in a couple of weeks, we're going to get a lot more into these actual strategies and how they perform. So today we're going to be establishing our baseline and how we'll be evaluating it, seeing how things look. And if you're curious, I can really get into this. So just want to put that out there. A lot of data. We'll see. I'm sure some of you have flipped ahead for those of you who have printouts in front of me. Thanks, Andrew.
Yeah, and I know we've talked at multiple meetings. I mean, when you see us, saying 2050 and, what's going to happen in 2050, I know for all of us that's a lifetime away, but, those are dates that we use to sort of look at. That doesn't necessarily mean we're only focused on 2050. We're focused on today and trying to improve things today, but we do use out years to kind of look at traffic. So, but before we kind of get into some of the detail, we are going to be using some polling today, some live polling. And so you'll see on the screen here, we're going to be using Poll Everywhere. In the right there, if you have your smartphone out, if you would scan that QR code, that'll get you in. You can also join via the web by going to pollev.com, and you can see the address to join. So I'm going to give everyone 30 seconds or so to get on, and then we're going to go to our question here, which is just our first sort of fun question, if you will. But what is your favorite recreational activity? So after you get on, so I see at least one person got on. So this is just intended to help everyone see that
Yeah, for those of you Andrew, for those of you who have the printouts, you'll have to scan the code on the screen. It didn't print on the printout, so apologies.
So yeah, only
You
scan
do
the
not have
code.
to participate. This is a fun elective thing, and we will have more substantive questions as we progress today.
Usually your camera can
It's our
zoom
way
in.
It's our way of giving you confidence that your input is working. So I see biking and bicycling, dogs, the beach, surfing and fishing. Do I dare ask my colleagues what bobbing is? Because I don't know if I know what bobbing is. Apples, so bowling, great. All right. So I think what we'll do is I'm going to turn it over to Leah. This worked. Again, we'll have some more poll questions to get everyone involved as we go. So Leah, you're up.
Thanks, Andrew. So we have a diverse group of folks in the room, and as we'll discuss momentarily, the Coastal Corridor Study has been going on for quite some time. So we do want to start with a recap just to kind of level set. We're not going to spend a ton of time on this because we have a lot of great new mapping and data to take a look at, but we just want to walk through a little bit of the background. So this has been going on for quite some time. We started in 2019 with our preliminary data analysis, and that was in response to Maryland's announcement that the Bay Bridge was considering, increasing its volume and throughput into the Eastern Shore and on into Delaware. So we were collaborating with Maryland, MTA at that time, on a lot of data collection. But then, COVID happened and everything went upside down, and we had no clue what was going to happen with traffic volumes or anything. So we did have to take a pause on that data collection and analysis. We pivoted to a lot of conversations. Many of you at that time, I know Andrew and some of my teammates did a listening tour, spoke with many of you or your colleagues in 21, 2022. And we did then also leverage some different platforms, streetlight data, big data platforms, to kind of confirm the results of our analysis in the 2022 range. We did make the decision then at that point in time to divide our original study area, which was essentially from the state line all the way to Route 1, into a couple distinct pieces. So we did see a lot more issues with capacity-related issues, motor vehicle volume, east of 113. So the Coastal Corridor Study Phase 1 really focused on that area you can see outlined in green. But we also knew there are some things we heard about from our friends in Greenwood and Bridgeville on the western side of the county as well. So there were also two transportation studies, community transportation studies out that way. So now we're kind of pulling the gang back together. We are still looking at that entirety of the east-west across the county to look at those east-west routes as we are beginning our implementation phase here. So as many of you know, there are a couple of key recommendations that came out of these studies. So Andrew already mentioned a couple of them. The Milton SR16 corridor study, the US 9 corridor study, as well as an active transportation plan for Milton. That project is actually already wrapped up with a final document. Also highlighted, you see Newton Road in the west part of the county. So those are major corridor studies that already have begun, that came out of the umbrella Coastal Corridors effort. And you'll note today we are also talking about Route 24 because due to a lot of ongoing development and other data analysis, that's kind of emerged as a key consideration. I know this is a very busy slide. I know you can't read everything on it, but each of these titles is a hyperlink. So we will be distributing this presentation after the meeting. So you are able to check in on ongoing capital projects that DelDOT is working on the DelDOT project portal. And we include this because I want to note, even though we have been studying this area since 2019, it is not like we've been sitting on our hands waiting to make improvements. DelDOT has a very full slate of capital improvements ongoing, as you can see on that map there with all those pins. And, the capital program is very robust in this part of the county. So we do not want you to think that just because we've been studying, nothing's going on. There's plenty underway right now. And as you're going to hear today about a lot of mapping we're doing for future conditions. All of these improvements are plugged into that model. So we are assuming that the improvements DelDOT has programmed right now are factored into our future projections. So back to that coastal corridors recommendations, we had a lot of different ideas that came out of that study. And really the intent with the variety of recommendations was to respond to a really dynamic system we have. There's a lot of change happening in Sussex County in particular. So we have, everything from policy recommendations that are short and long term to physical improvement ideas ranging from the parcel scale all the way up to the network. So, we are constantly altering our approach and pivoting to kind of meet what's going on and what we're hearing from our planning partners. And also, it's not just DelDOT involved in these decisions or the solutions, right? It's many of you who work at the municipal level, the county level, and for other state agencies who are a critical piece of the solution. As you all know, one big piece of that is integrating with land use. So we know that in Delaware, it's challenging. Although the department controls 90% of the roadways, it is municipal governments and the county who are making land use decisions. And, those really impact each other quite greatly. So we'll hear more about that from Ben in a little bit, but we do acknowledge that any solutions we determine that are, a roadway widening or a new regional connector has to relate to what's coming soon as it relates to development. And since our study wrapped up, there's been some significant progress in this realm. We know Sussex County just advanced, they had their land use reform working group that just published their initial findings, as well as ongoing comprehensive plans that many of you work on a rotating basis. Also, I know Office of State Planning Coordination recently is working on updates to their strategies for state spending policy. So there's a lot going on. Fortunately, we have a lot of those players at our table and keeping us in the loop. And DelDOT has a lot of tools to keep tabs on what's going on day in and day out. We have what's called an ITMS, Integrated Transportation Management System. It would be a transportation presentation without lots of fun acronyms. But essentially, DelDOT has their finger on the pulse of what's going on our roads 24/7, 365 days out of the year, monitored out of their Transportation Management Center. So we are, in addition to the projections we're making, we are pulling in data from a variety of sources and working to make sure that traffic is moving. Also, recently the Transportation Operations Management Plan was updated for Sussex County. So we included on the screen here a QR code and a link. Again, just check out at your leisure. There's a really awesome interactive story map there with more data about what's going on with the TOM for Sussex County. So I think we all know, especially those of you in this room, this is a challenging thing we're tackling together. None of us know what is going to happen in the future. We're planning based on educated estimates, right? And also, right now especially, our resources are limited. And we really need to prioritize where those limited resources are going to meet the critical needs and community priorities that we have here. We also know that traditional approaches may not meet community goals. So I think historically we know a lot of money and investment went to expand road capacity. Ben will share in a little bit about why sometimes that does not work out the way we hope it will. And also, we're not going to solve everyone's problems to their satisfaction. We're going to have to balance trade-offs and collaborate on what solutions can look like in this space. So, in summary,
and Leah, if I could jump in, going back, you could go back one slide. In many ways, this could have been put up as the role of the Coastal Corridors Monitoring Committee or the TAG. I mean, when you look at this is what makes this work so important but so difficult. And this is where you all can help navigate this path for us. You can both help us, by knowing what's going on the ground, by helping us prioritize, by better understanding community goals, and understanding that we can't do everything. So where should we look? But the advocacy in your role is really key, because everything that applies in this slide applies to everywhere in the state of Delaware, not just where we are. And so we're focused here, and we want your help to try to get things done. And so, but these are definitely the challenges. So go ahead, Leah. Sorry about that.
No, thank you, Andrew. Please, happy to have you interject. So In summary, just so you know, the data collection effort did not stop when we finalized that study. It has been ongoing. It will continue to be ongoing. And fortunately, the department is developing new tools to help us really have a more nuanced understanding of what's been going on. And we're not the only ones who are working in this space. Of course, Sussex County, as well as Office of State Planning, are also developing new ways of looking at our land use patterns and development. We very much rely on input from you, because at the end of the day, mapping and data is only so accurate, and your on-the-ground input is critical. And also, as Austin said, DelDOT's engineering practices are evolving, as they should, with that focus on safe systems and safety as the paramount thing. We need to be saving lives on our roadway systems, and that needs to be a priority, as well as making sure folks have other ways to get around than just a personal vehicle. Because that's going to be part of the solution too, even for reducing traffic issues, especially in our towns. So with that, does anyone have any questions? Clarify, that was 5 years and 10 minutes. So there is a pretty much every presentation we've given is on the website. So we do have a lot of supporting documentation. So if there's any piece of this that is of interest, we can definitely point you in that direction so you can listen to me talk more.
I would like to clarify the Sussex County Planning and Zoning Commission and County Council, while they do have accountability for land use decisions, there is another entity, the courts of the state of Delaware, that also get to weigh in if people are unhappy with the decisions made by the county. And as we've recently seen, there are a few cases where the courts side with people who are not happy with our decisions to constrain their rights to use their land as they want to. So we can't, assuming that we're rubber stamping development where ideally it wouldn't be happening, isn't really what's happening. It's we are reacting to the fact that we know that we could be tied up in a lot of litigation that's very expensive and costly to our taxpayers if we don't let people use their personal property as they think they should be able to. So anyway, just wanted to throw that out there as a consideration. We can't operate in a vacuum.
Your name and role, just for.
Oh, I'm Scott Collins. I'm on the Planning and Zoning Commission of Sussex County, and believe me, I wish that we could turn down some of the proposals and be able to hold those decisions up in court. But even minor inconveniences to some property owners, the courts don't uphold.
Thank you, Scott, for that context. I think that's really important.
Thanks.
Anyone else have a question or comment before we move on? Okay, we're going to go to our next poll question. So again, you can scan, if you joined us late, you can scan that QR code up in the right corner there to get into Poll Everywhere, or use the web address on the left. What words describe your vision for the regional transportation system? We started you off easy with what's your favorite recreational activity. So now we're jumping into it here. So what word or words describe your vision for the regional transportation system? Equitable, multimodal, balanced, planned, functional, pedestrian-centered, multimodal, kinder, capacitous. I'd have to get out my dictionary for that one. I think I know what it means. Someone once called me capacitous. Management. Wow, there's a lot here. Smooth, safety, stressful, vehicular, integrated, options, burdened. Okay. Well, we will capture all of this. It's really cool. I love this tool. Concurrency, I see, micro-mobility, hoverboards, bikeable.
Okay. Kinder. And the next polling question is a little different. So instead of entering a word, it's select the options. So you should see the options when you kind of access, but there are more than shown on the screen here. So just curious how many of you have been engaged with a variety of the planning studies we've talked about already today.
And again, you can select all that apply, so you're not limited to one.
I think it's only letting us select one.
Oh, lame.
What's your favorite?
All right. Well, the one thing I can only, Lee, I don't know what you can see, but we can only see down to SR16 corridor study. We can't see below that.
That's okay. We'll report that on the results also.
But at least of what I could see, there's at least one person from each of these groups that are here, which is great.
See those Seymour.
All right, well, thank you all for that. So we're gonna move on now and transition to the new stuff and what we have been up to. So I'm gonna start us off with a little overview of our approach before I turn it over to colleague Ben. So essentially, we're taking a 3-step process here. What we're gonna focus on the most today is our risks assessment. And that really is focused on exploring how are things working now, and how likely are they to continue working in the future. So Andrew's mentioned, our current year in 2050, so that is our future year that we decided to use. And also, we have a range of ideas of what could happen. So you'll note there a range of land use scenarios, and we'll explain a little bit more what that means and how we attempted to quantify that. And of course, because we're in Sussex County, we also really need to pay attention to summertime as opposed to off-season numbers. Now, we know increasingly there's less of a difference between those two times, but there is still a pretty substantial difference, as you'll see as we get into our mapping. And what we wanted to do was really establish is where are those needs and risks most evident, where are they most urgent, and where are they most likely to occur. So we have our quantitative focus, the data and analysis, but we also, from all the years we've spent talking to you and your neighbors and colleagues, we know there's a series of priorities. We heard some of those a little bit ago with our word cloud exercise. So, we're not just worried about traffic congestion. It's more than just that, right? We are first and foremost, DelDOT's first priority is ensuring safety for anyone who's using the road network, regardless of whether they're driving, biking, walking. We care about that congestion. That is still a piece of the puzzle, right? We need people to have mobility. They need to be able to get to where they need to go. We need our economy to function. But we do want to increase trip options. We want folks to have a variety of multimodal solutions. So we have our friends from DART, DTC, here today representing transit, and I know a number of you are working on a variety of bike and pedestrian projects as well. All of this supports Delaware's economy and the success of our small business and large business owners across the region, and our own ability, social and health things, as well as environment and resilience. So we heard a lot of these different priorities throughout all of our outreach, and we're going to show you today how we are attempting to kind of bake in those priorities to some of the data and analysis we're doing. So once we are done with our current risk assessment, that is when we will move into that mitigation strategy assessment. So that map Andrew showed in the beginning with the purple and red lines, how can we help improve some of the risks we're seeing in the current system? So again, we'll touch on that briefly today, but that's really going to be the focus of meeting 2 coming up in a couple of weeks. And then all of that data and assessment, we're starting at the regional level. All of these things work relative to one another. But we will be applying them then to our corridor studies, project development, and implementation. So that is our process. And again, today our focus will really be on that risks assessment piece. So we have one more poll before I turn it over. This one is ranking. So it's a drag and drop. I want to know of those performance measures, which are most important to you and your organization. You know, sometimes this is a little finicky on the phones, so hopefully it plays nice. You're also our pilot victims before we try and use something like this for the general public in December. If you need it, tell us.
So we are, oh, there we go.
Since I'm more nuanced, take a little more time to drag and drop things. Let's see if I can.
Again, I can't see all of the responses, but safety is first and has stayed, as different things have moved around, safety has remained number one, which we kind of thought would be the case. Okay. Maybe go back up to the top. Excuse me, safety and then multimodal improvements. Alleviating traffic congestion is third. Environmental resiliency is fourth. And I can't see below that.
Again, we'll report out on these following the meeting. Working on
The congestion is the
Traffic congestion just got uncongested and moved to second place.
All right, away. Great.
Okay.
Well, thank you all.
okay, quick, get there. Now you
All right.
selected multimodal interventions.
Thank you all for weighing in on that. Now, with that, I'm going to turn it over to Ben, who is new-ish to our team, but I think many of you have met him at this point.
Yeah, nice to be with you, Ben Gruspitz. And I'm gonna give you a look at how we are reading and scoring our transportation network with regard to risks. And first, a little bit of a background here, I think that might be helpful. There's a cyclical relationship between land use and transportation. People live, work, shop, recreate, and more, and in different places, and those places, those trips they take, have impacts. What mode they choose, and the network as a whole is impacted by all those different choices, which in turn impacts where people decide to live and work in the future. Growth in one part of this cycle impacts the rest of that cycle, and the cycle can become a vicious one if it's not well managed. Sorry, my mouse is a little bit weird too. But for example, you could have people try to address congestion in one part of the system, and that addressing the travel time makes a shorter travel time, causing some people to feel like, oh, it's pretty smooth. If I go through here, I can live further away, and then that can create more problems in the system. Later on, higher costs for transportation for those individuals, higher costs for maintenance of the roadways, more driving, and we have constrained budgets, and our funding for transportation is on the decline from our usual sources, unfortunately, over the last few decades. And so definitely people's personal decisions are a part of this cycle, but governments and agencies have a major role in keeping that cycle in check. We do that by making decisions on what's available or not based on what they fund, incentivize, disincentivize, permit, or prohibit. And the local governments, county and municipalities have some say over locations where things are permitted to be built. They also can make decisions on parking and things like that that might change how people decide to travel or move. And DelDOT also has different things it can fund and incentivize, and all those things play into what our choices are, what those individual decisions can be. And all this is to say too that you really can't manage all of these different pieces of the cycle very well without the coordination of those agencies, but also without the data to kind of show you some insights on that. And that's why we're using this travel demand model of DelDOT's that gives us sort of this decision support tool to identify where some of these risks are, along with using other data sources. So a little bit about the travel demand model. The peninsula model, as it's known, is looking at all these Delaware counties as well as Maryland counties on the eastern shore. It has a sense of what trips come in and out of that model area, as well as within the model area, what are the future for roadway improvements, like we was talking about capital projects. We can model those, how they perform. We have a sense of how much growth is coming into these counties based on our forecasts. The Delaware Population Consortium is the source of our household and our population employment and things. And this gives us a sense of how that network performs in the future. And so we'll wind up with some different statistics that you can get out of the model. This is the table on the bottom shows that the trips coming in and out, or with starting in the region and staying in Sussex County itself, a certain percentage are just internal trips. Some are on both sides of the border, some in Sussex County, some outside, and some are just passing through. And all those kinds of dynamics impact the conditions. As well as you can see on that top chart, the Sussex County projections show that the summer population in 2023 is pretty much equal to the off-season population in 2050. And then that seasonal population in households would be even greater. So that adds to the mix. And again, this is a decision support tool, this model. It's not a crystal ball. It has a lot of utility, which is why we use it for our analyses, but it also has limitations. One of those limitations is that it doesn't go all the way around that cycle, right? It will stop at network conditions. We don't have something that tells us, okay, in response to that, those new travel conditions, where will be, how will the real estate market react, et cetera. And so in this analysis, we create sort of from our standard forecast allocation, we redistributed some of that future growth to be a more compact future or a more sprawling future. And just to kind of demonstrate what that looks like, on the left hand here, we're just showing existing 2023 conditions for household density, off-season on the top, summer on the bottom. You can see on the coastal areas in the summer, that's where you see some of that orange shining through, the highest density for households. And then if you look at the future growth, so this is just growth, this is not the total. So it's a little less intense than you see on the existing. You can essentially sort of add the density of this future growth to the left maps to kind of get a sense of what that will be like in these different areas. But this is our standard allocation with the addition of some known development projects that came in after that forecast was developed. And then we take that and we reshuffle some of that future growth. And we have on the left a more compact view of things where you'll see the more intense blues in some of our more built out, developed areas already. And then on the right, the sprawl has lighter shades and they'll kind of be distributed a little more across And staying kind of with those same development assumptions that we have in the standard allocation there. So with that, I'll jump into how we use that context to start scoring our transportation network. And is there any questions at this point, though? Okay. No, yeah. Right.
On slide
And
40.
you can announce who you are.
Oh, Randy Meredith. I'm on the Milton Town Council. On slide 44, it's the map on the left, the truck, auto traffic on the right. The truck numbers just seem low, 3%, 5%, 1%. Maybe I'm just wondering what does that number represent?
So a total of 9% of roadways, overall throughout the county and throughout the network. So certain roadways are going to have a lot more truck intensity. This is just across the Sussex County network, so it dilutes a little bit. But that's just saying that trucks, some 3% of them are starting their trip in the county and ending in the county. 5% of them are starting either in the county and going outside the county, or outside the county and coming into the county. And then 1% are just passed through, that their destination and their origin are outside the county.
So is the total percentage of vehicle traffic 9% is truck?
Right.
All right. I guess because
Across
trucks are
the
so
network.
much bigger, they feel like.
It feels like if you're on 1, or if you're on 113, or you're going to feel a lot more of that presence. It's going to be a higher percentage. It could be something that we could map, is just to show which ones have which percentage, which roadways on the network. But this is just an aggregate across the county, a whole thing. So not everything's going to get that, but the feel is different on the specific facility for sure.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. And we actually will show a little bit about truck or freight routes. Anything else? So just getting into the scoring. So we're going to take this broader view that we've been talking about of future risks in the system, and we're going to look to see, base those measures of risk based off of our stakeholder priorities that we're hearing from DelDOT, from you, as Leah said, from a lot of different engagements we've had in the communities over the years on different plans. And we're using data from the model and elsewhere. Each of these measures, we have these sort of 5 component measures. They each score from 0 to 2. And then in the end, we have this combined risk score that's going to be a 0 to 10. So I'm going to sort of walk you through each of the different elements of it one at a time.
If I could add then, so just to look at the first row as kind of an example, the risk is impeding efficiency, right? And we are associating that with the stakeholder priorities of alleviating traffic congestion and economic development. So we kind of made a value judgment there, and then we're measuring that by looking at roadway capacity. So it's kind of lots of things to process here, and Ben's going to walk through the map, but we'll kind of return to this chart throughout to kind of remind everyone of how we're trying to tie all this data back to what we're actually aiming to focus on, our priorities that we've heard from you all.
I'll just add too, you're about to see a lot of maps. So pay attention to as slides change, as the text change, so you're comprehending what you're seeing on the screen.
Thank you, Austin. As a viewer of this a few times, you know the experience. And thank you. My notes here say something along those lines, but they're all kind of cut off in my mouth. So do it by memory, but remember to chime in if I'm skipping something. So this is just going to be like a little sneak preview of where we're going to end up. Is this sort of combined risk score kind of filtered down to highest risk areas in the system. And that's just to show where we're heading so that we'll walk you through now how we get there. So we'll start with this overcapacity or peak capacity score and how we did that. Again, capacity is important. It's not the only thing. We want to focus on more than just that because if we only focus on that, things can get a little off kilter and that cycle gets a little more vicious. But it's an important one again. We're going to start off with a little bit of definitional stuff too. Capacity is really, something you don't really need to know the formula of a volume to capacity ratio or anything. You just need to know that if we're saying it's over capacity, we mean that it's going to have significant and unpredictable delays happening in the system. And again, historically, this is kind of the main focus of transportation planning. And we'll get through this and then we'll address some of the other measures. So I'm going to start off with some of the familiarity of 2023 conditions for recent year stuff. And we're also going to just start off with off-season, just so we know off-season, we're just saying September to May conditions on average. And starting with the off-season in 2023, which should be familiar again to folks, you can see that the performance on, this is just looking at our AM peak period from 6:30 to 9:30 on average. We can say that, in yellow, we've got facilities where half the roadway is over capacity in one direction, essentially. And then some, they only pop up in a couple of spots, mostly are along 113, but they are in both directions. And then we can switch to a PM peak view and create a 6 p.m. and that will show you the same thing, but where things are flaring up. Here you see both directions in, say on 9 approaching Lewis. So we use those both peaks and both directions, and we give like a half score to each side in each period, and we give this peak capacity score from 0 to 2. But here 2 is anything that's going to be over capacity in both directions in both periods. Okay. So that's where things you can see in Jacksboro, something there, small, Selleysville, Georgetown, a couple of those in there. And that's just in the off season. And in the quarters we're studying, nothing's really showing up on the 16 quarters. A few overcapacity segments are on 9, especially near 1. And most overcapacity segments are on 24. So moving on to the summer.
So, the question.
Yes.
So you're talking about off-season.
Sorry, Dick, could you
conditions. Dick Trask from Milton.
Thank you.
We're talking about off-season conditions here with roads being congested either both ways or one way. Are we talking about commuters here going back and forth from their jobs? Or are we talking about traffic that's coming in from outside of the county?
So it's all traffic, all purposes, but at peaks, that's when we see the most, we call it the peak because the commuters really add to the overall volume. So that's why, you could say that, a lot of it is caused by the commuter traffic.
So the commuter traffic is basically constant, right? Even if we go into the seasonal aspect of it.
I mean, there will be a little bit of variation of who's got summer work and down at the beach, and some people move down to the beach for employment in the summer, have seasonal work, but at the same time, that's a pretty small fraction. So generally, yes, it would be a little more steady. And then when we see the summer conditions, we see things flare up because we're adding all sorts of other trips into the mix.
So the reason we look at peak is because we want to look at when volumes are highest on a regular basis.
Okay, the point I was trying to make is that, you've got off-season conditions where the residents of the county are moving through these roads for whatever reason, shopping, going to work, whatever. And I can understand why, in some cases, it's one lane versus another lane, especially with commuters and so on. But the point I was trying to make was that this idea of the off-season capacity doesn't alleviate itself when we go into on-season capacity because it adds to it.
Yep. Yeah,
Yes.
so you'll
This
just
is your
see,
baseline, really.
sort of, yeah, you could say that. I mean, I think,
Wait till you see these next maps.
yeah, I like that. There's more. But,
Yeah, I'm Will, I work with the Nature Conservancy. Can you go back to slide 51? I was just getting tripped up on something and I just want some clarity.
Sure.
So on this, it says the red on the map is lower risk. Is that reversed?
Yeah, the coloring is a different coloring scheme and it actually is filtered here. So again, this is sort of where we end up. So
Okay.
you'll see a little bit more leading into this, but I can see why it's a little counterintuitive there. But yeah, so the lighter, like it's almost like if you think of fire, right? It's like the white or the
Okay.
yellow might be more intense than the red or the purples or something such. Okay. Okay. And so we were at off season and then we're just gonna jump into summertime, still 2023. But here we, see a significant more coverage of overcapacity roadways. This is the AM peak. And then this is the PM peak. So a lot of same stuff, a little marginal change. But then when we add it all together into that peak capacity score that we're using for our risk assessment, this is again showing all those that are overcapacity in both directions in both peak periods. So, in our quarters, here we see a little bit more on the 16 quarter in the Ellendale area, and then we've got 9 is flaring up more, and a lot more on 24, especially approaching Milton. And I'm jumping you into the future now. I got 2015 highlighted. I'll just jump back to 2023 a little bit here too, just so you can see the jump. And the good news is that this is a future where we don't build the capital projects of the CTP. So it actually is better when we assume that those projects are built, which is the next slide. So I'm going to go from here, no CTP projects, to here, where we have the CTP projects. Go back a little bit, back and forth. The lessening is due to those projects that are broken. And it's important to note too that this is not a foregone conclusion. We build the CTP and that's it. The whole point of this is to sort of start from this perspective and then start using this as that decision support tool to help us plan what's next, what else should we be taking on, right? So that's our view of capacity in the future. I want to just, okay. So that's it for the capacity end of things for now. I'm going to move on to some of our other types of measures, if that's good for folks. Did you have something, Jared?
Yeah.
And who are you?
I'm Jared Kaufman with DART. Does the last one that you showed there with CTP being implemented, does that assume induced demand, or is it just kind of assuming once it's built and then that's it?
So it's just using the straight forecast for land use and is saying that if the county grows to what is forecasted and allocated the way that is typical, then these are the kind of conditions based on the demand from that. It doesn't really circle back to say like, you know, any of those CTP improvements are then going to make people live here or there. Because that concept of induced demand, where it makes like what we were talking about before, as far as how a trip might be easier to make now, and you can go a longer distance, you may consider driving longer distance from, you know, moving your home to a further away place, etc. But this is just sort of saying, okay, this is what we see with the same land use, you know, in the background. Oh, Will, sorry.
So I'm looking at 30 there, and with the CTP investments, am I interpreting correctly that it shows there'll be more overcapacity than without?
I'm not seeing much change at all, toggle between them.
So like 30.
Oh, I'm sorry.
There is, yes.
You're saying the more southern end. I was looking north of 9, but you're saying, yeah, there's something that happens on 30, just north of 24, south of 9.
What might be kind of triggering that increase, do you think?
It's a good question. I think that sometimes, you know, all these things have ripple effects. It's almost like a whack-a-mole, you know, and you can improve one thing and it maybe makes certain trips more attractive to get to that facility that moves faster, and then increases the demand for, you know, accessing it through a route that maybe doesn't have much capacity right now, right? So it's a complicated system, right, where you do one thing and then it has an impact elsewhere, which is why it's good to look at, you know, okay, so now what are the conditions if we do it this, and this?
There also could be additional projects that need to be developed that nobody's contemplating right now that aren't on the list, right?
Exactly. So that's I think the point of this is to say, okay, you know, what happens, and most of it is an improvement. Some of it we might see you know, a negative in some areas. So then what do we do in response to that? What are the next CTP projects we should be planning? Yeah.
Hand up online.
Oh,
Yeah,
great.
Brian has a question. Brian, unmute and come on and ask.
Great, thank you. This is Brian Olbeck from the town of Georgetown. Just had a question about.
Hey, Brian, you're coming through very faintly. Can you, Brian, it's hard to hear you. Can you speak up?
Sorry about that. Are you hearing me better now?
Still a little faint, but go ahead.
All right, sorry. I just had a question about what the individual segments on like a road, when they change color, is that a function of increased like volume at those places, or maybe just like a failing intersection that's causing overcapacity?
So I would say that it could be a little of both, essentially. If we're going from 2023 and we're jumping forward, we can count on more volume because of the greater demand from the population and employment increase, right? So more trips will be made. And then if we're going from the CTP, no CTP here to CTP projects being built, we're seeing potentially relief of capacity in some places that were bottlenecks. And we may see some rerouting as a result, which is kind of what Will was asking a little bit of, like that sometimes you change a condition and you still have the same amount of people, but they make their trip differently based on what is most advantageous. You know, and you can think of it as, say, your Google Map GPS. Will it see a route as the better choice because of conditions that are present now that keep it flowing where it wasn't flowing before? And so you may reroute and add to volume that wasn't on a roadway to get there to do that. So some of these will change the capacity and some of them will be, you know, because of the projects. A lot of these capacities will stay the same. It's just that we've got more volume on those roads.
And again, return to that definition of significant and unpredictable delays. So that's like, we're talking about a random traffic jam popping up, not just, oh, you have to like slow down a little.
Right. And again, this is peak periods and it's not, all throughout the day or anything, but, again, we want to see these worst case scenarios to get a sense of the function and what might be done to address them. So I'm going to move on. That's it for questions for now. And I'm going to go into some of our other measures. And I'm going to start with our priority corridors. This is just essentially looking at a subset of the network that is either going to be a freight route or freight corridor or a evacuation route. And I'm going to start with the evacuation routes. So this is just in black, just to note the system that is considered evacuation routes. And on top of that, I'm going to overlay a score that is really a sub-score for priority corridors that's just looking at the evacuation route contribution here. So here it's going to be a little bit lighter. We're only going to 1 point because we're going to add this with the freight routes to 2 priority corridor scores. But the evacuation routes are, and the score for them is really based on, again, kind of capacity. If we're seeing the peak period is lacking the capacity to take people in those normal peak conditions, then maybe there's some concern there for an evacuation that we may impede folks getting out of the area when they need to. So a 1 here is really just going to indicate some concern if evacuation is necessary. And moving on to our freight corridors, which is really actually a subset of evacuation routes. And these are corridors that are key for our shipment of goods and to and from and through our communities. And with our freight score, we're looking for places that are underutilized, roadways that could be better utilized throughout the day for trucks. So maybe some of them are going at peak periods and it's slowing things up. There might be a lot better capacity at different times. And so we say that throughout the day, it's a little underutilized for what it could be on these. And we want to keep trucks mainly on these roads so that they're not using other facilities.
And Randy, maybe that's kind of getting a little bit at what you're saying. We're not seeing trucks where we would like them to go. And obviously a truck's origin and destination is probably not on one of our freight routes. They have local destinations.
Yeah, but and this is certainly a spot though that you're going to see if you're riding one of these roadways, you're going to see a greater percentage than 9%. And so we combine those evacuation scores and the freight scores together to make this priority corridors score, and that gets us to a 2 if that segment scores a 1 for both the freight and evacuation. That's that.
I have a question.
Yes.
This is just kind of off the wall. Does DelDOT have the ability to interact with GPS systems and help route, for instance, trucks and so on into the proper roads?
I'm not positive. I know that our traffic management center, the TMC, coordinates with GPS providers, but to the extent that they do that, I'm not completely sure.
I just thought it might be a good idea that if we had some influence with the GPS, for instance, in Milton, if you're on Waze or whatever, and you're in a truck traveling through Milton, it's going to take you right down to the center of town, which we don't want to happen. So if there was a way to alert that truck that these are the roads that are more preferable for truck traffic than the local roads.
Yeah, I think one of the issues is any truck driver can use any app they want.
No, I understand.
So I think there has been some effort to coordinate with trucking specific applications in the past, but if they're still electing to use Waze or Google Maps and they don't have a setting where it's like you tell them what size the vehicle you're in, it's tricky. So I know it's an issue that the TMC has been looking at, and the statewide freight plan is currently being updated, and there's other initiatives involved. So we can get some more details on that for you.
I just thought it might be a good idea on how to
Great
control
idea.
some of the traffic.
Definitely. I think some of the bigger trucking companies are gonna have all that kind of information in their own app probably. And even like all the bridge weight restrictions and all that sort of stuff of how they want to route considering that. But you think about all these delivery vehicles and, a lot of them are even just renting a U-Haul or something like that to make do, and some of them may not have those kinds of.
I realize it's not perfect, but
Yeah, no, it's a great
you're
point.
trying to get trucks to go down 13 and 113 and Route 9, whatever,
Mhm.
for instance. It might be a good idea that if we had that capacity, the ability, when the truck enters into the state or into the county, or whatever, to have their GPS system kind of move it in.
Great. Oh,
I have a question about evacuation routes. So I've never been in a place that had to be evacuated. Would DelDOT make both direct, like north and south traffic? Could they send it all north, perhaps?
my understanding is that would happen in many cases. I don't, I think that's the assumption. So it is a little trickier to base the capacity needs off of the peak, period when they're going both directions, right?
It'd all be one.
But
Yeah.
again, it's kind of used as an indicator more than anything. There may be a concern here and we're scoring it because of already constrained in peak periods. Maybe, if everybody's heading in the same direction, there's ample capacity, but also that's a lot of people at the same time, right? So it's just flagged as a potential concern. So we're going to move on to flooding. Our roadways that are resilient in the face of increased severe storm activity is a real challenge in low-lying Delaware, especially in low-lying Sussex County. And here we have on the map this subset of roadways that are flagged as the top 10 flooding priority roadways in the county, DelDOT. And so this is, where we know there are issues now. And when we jump to 2050 conditions, we are just scoring everything as a 2 if it doesn't. We're not assuming that a CTP project has improved that situation. Might be a little bit hard to read on the maps, but essentially here, if you're seeing purple, it's not addressed by a CTP project, and if you're seeing black, that's where it was, and now we're assuming it's been, improved. So that's our flooding scores. We did a 2 if you're in one of these segments. And then we have this Main Street candidates concept, which is actually inspired by a lot of the feedback we've heard in Milton about prioritizing lower speeds and better connectivity on SR16 through the municipality. And here we've developed this kind of metric that looks at various measures of density for towns and communities that might be more ideal for our Main Street. So looking at housing density, employment or employer density, bus stops, intersection density, and that all kind of helps us. And then looking at a subset of roadways that are called collectors, not arterials, but collectors. And we call them candidates for Main Street treatment potentially, like SR16 through Milton. And you can see as we score this based on the speeds and the volume that the model forecasts, we're seeing even on like 16 here, it's scoring a 2, meaning that it's going to be least comfortable for Main Street activities on that side of 1, west of 1 on 16. So that pops up. And so hopefully when we look at mitigation in the future, we can look at that lessening with some of the projects that could be picked for 16. Yeah, sure.
I was surprised to not see Bridgeville.
Yeah, that also came up. There was a section of Bridgeville that did come up, but because it was an arterial, we only are using collectors because the thought with arterials is that it's kind of designed for moving traffic through. So the speeds and the volume is going to be the concern for sure. It doesn't mean that there's not a safety or a comfort concern there, but it's one that gets filtered out because we're only looking at collectors.
That being said, this is a measure we're developing and refining. So if we have feedback from this group and representatives from some of these municipalities that they have roads in their communities that they would consider kind of in this space, I think we definitely could tweak the way we're looking at this and the way we're showing it on the map. So
Yeah,
all of this is tailor-made to Delaware and the situation here in Sussex. So
yeah,
we're open to that for sure in your feedback.
yeah. The
And we have
measure,
Brian-
Brian has another question online. Brian?
Hi there. Yes. No, I would also say that, there's probably streets in Georgetown that are missing from here, like East Market Street, I would say certainly, as a candidate for Main Street activity. I'm not sure what street is being identified in Georgetown from this scale.
yeah, it's hard to read, but no, point taken. And I would say too that, the emphasis here in anticipation of the border studies that we're, slated to do, we wanted to make sure places like 16 and Milton was functioning well. But this is sort of a beta product of identifying these candidates spots. And like Leah's saying, we could, use some feedback of investigating ways that we could tweak that metric. I would also say, SR1 through all the resort area would be, it would be on there if it weren't for an arterial as the facility type. And we know that that's a significant barrier for pedestrian and biking activity because so many people want to get to there.
And thanks for pointing out the applicability to corridor studies, but also we hope that these maps are used by many of you for more than just DelDOT. So I think moving forward, we've already had the counties taking a look at this county planning and sees a lot of applicability to their comprehensive plan, which is coming up. And we would love for a variety of municipal stakeholders in the room, if some of these measures are of interest and what you're seeing output here, and that gets into map scale, but also how we're measuring things. That's definitely something I think Austin and the department would support, is using this and broadly from at the municipal level as well. So future conversation for sure.
Yeah, at a system scale, it's definitely hard to pick this one apart a bit. Thank you for the feedback. Another thing that we kind of developed as a newish metric here using crash data was our high crash locations. And this is just looking at fatal or injurious crashes occurring from 2020 to 2024. So a 5-year period, a typical period used to identify things to be concerned about. And this is the locations that the density of, you can think of that density as sort of a recurrence of crashes happening at some of these locations. That is the top 25% of crash recurrence in this period segments. So on those, again, like the others, we're trying to give an assessment of what the system looks like in 2050 with regard to the ingredients that could make crashes, more severe and alarming. And we're also taking some account for CTP projects that will hopefully make some improvement to some of these locations. But generally looking at speeds, faster speedars are more likely to injure or kill others, and that volume. And the more volume you have, more exposure, more likelihood.
And I will note, capital CTP projects are not the only improvements DelDOT is making to the roads. So as you all know, there's a number of ongoing operation and maintenance projects and hazard elimination program projects that may be as simple as adding a four-way stop somewhere. That department's seen a huge reduction in crashes from that. So right now, this map does not factor in all of those small improvements that our traffic team is working on day in and day out. So again, a way to measure things, but it's not the only improvement that may impact future conditions.
Yeah.
I know I made this
And Ben,
comment.
if I could jump in for 1 second, this is Andrew. I did want to just reference a comment that was made a couple minutes ago by Dara Schumeyer, a member of the TAG. Her comment was Virginia does make some of it, this is regarding evacuation routes. Virginia does make some of its peninsular evacuation routes all inland bound in an evacuation emergency. So just wanted to get that comment out there for you.
They use traffic lighting and they block entrances going the wrong direction when that happens, which would be significant investment, but probably would be a better alternative than having to manually have police scattered everywhere guiding people, right?
And I know I've said this before in the past. We have the longest, straightest, flattest roads of any place I've ever lived. And we have a very high incident rate of fatalities. And you can define some of that activity by the configuration of the roads and the capacity of the drivers that are going over those roads. But how do you get the person, be kind, who likes to pass on the solid line or pass on the right-hand side or tailgate you to the point where they either drive you off the road or create a difficult situation? There's a lot of aggressive drivers out there. And I'm not sure how to solve that problem.
I agree with that. And I think there are also a lot of drivers who drive 40 miles per hour no matter what the speed limit is, and they're just as dangerous as an aggressive driver, in my opinion. They also aren't paying attention to what they're doing often. So I've had them run lights and things like that, like they're not even there. So we have a lot of different road problems, drivers.
And again, just a reminder to people as you make comments, if you could let us know who you are so the people online know who's making the comments from in the room.
Thanks, Andrew. So Andrew, while you're chatting, did you want to lead this next?
Yeah, we've got our next poll question here. So which results are most concerning to you? So just ranking in order, the ones that are listed on the screen. And again, you'll have to go onto your poll everywhere. We can only see a few of them on the screen, but I know if you're on your phone, you're able to see all of the different options. So just rank those in order of priority in terms of which are most concerning to you. Again, you got overcapacity, you've got priority corridor freight routes, you got priority corridor evacuation routes, you've got flooding, you've got high motor vehicle speeds and volumes along candidate main streets, and you've got crashes. Trying to just get a sense of people who have joined us today of which of these results are most concerning to you in order. At least right now, we've got overcapacity and then crashes and then high vehicle speeds in our candidate main streets and then evacuation routes, or at least the top four that I can see. Okay, let's keep going, Ben.
Sounds good. Yeah, so now that gives you a little flavor too, the difficulties of the things you have to rank Personally, these are all important things. How do we make sense of what to prioritize? Just now to take it home to this combined risk scores. This is where we take all those 5 different component scores and we're adding them up to the 0 to 10 range. And looking at the system from that lens, this is jumping us back to 2023. But in here, well, you can see the longer list, starting with the, sort of a navy blue, but very thin line for our lowest ranking combined scores, and then getting into the purples and the reds and the orange, and highest being that yellow. Fortunately, we don't have anything over 9 popping up on the map in any of these scenarios, but this is where we see things in 2023 under those summer peak conditions. And then this is going to our 2050 standard forecast contribution. So a lot more popping up, a little of something on almost every roadway. But that, is one view of things. If I move into our land use scenarios, which we haven't really looked at the results for those in great detail today, I'll just give you a heads up. There's not a whole lot of change between the land use scenarios. Partly, like I said earlier, only 23% of the population was allowed to kind of find a new place to be because there's so much existing development in the county. So we kept those people where they live now, right? And we added to it in varying patterns. So the overall, it will only nudge a little bit, and this is that combined score. So here's our compact. I'm gonna go back and toggle your standard. It's compact. So we're not seeing a whole lot there. And then there's the sprawl. And then the compact. Not a lot of movement. But I think that when you isolate the different metrics themselves, you do see a little bit more on these funds. We'll get into a little bit more how we can use those other land use scenarios later. This is back at the standard forecast. And then I'm going to show you a little bit how we can further use this score and get to that endpoint of filtering that I was showing at the beginning. So just using this, but filtering down to the higher risk for greater than 4 segments in the standard summer, we get this set of facilities. We can further filter that to anything that is also greater than 4 in the compact summer or the sprawl summer. So there's a little narrowing there.
So that's like, regardless of how development happens in the future, whether if we do more smart growth, compact growth, or folks continue to develop in a sprawl, those corridors are still going to be a problem. So it kind of eliminates the land use question.
And then if we don't just look at the summer conditions, which, is a reality that you live with for 3 months of the year and is significant, but look at where it's a problem for all year round, that filter gets us to this. And that's sort of where we sort of end up. And you can play with this in a lot of different ways, and you can weight different, categories of risk differently. This is kind of all 5 evenly weighted. But it gives you something of a picture of where we can maybe focus some attention. And I think that this also allows us to, create a baseline of the future. And then when we start looking at our mitigation projects, we can look at scoring them in similar ways and see what improvements are made. Similar to the way you saw the CTP projects making some capacity improvements. And so that's kind of the point of this. Again, it's just sort of getting you acquainted with that sort of risk assessment of conditions without doing some of these mitigation opportunities. So I'm going to ask if there's any discussion, questions or comments people had at this point?
So that sort of wraps up a lot of the analysis, a lot of the data in terms of, and so we're going to see if anyone has any questions right now, and then we're going to go into some potential mitigation strategies. So we thought we would see if anyone has any questions. I do see a comment from Dara Schumeyer, again from the Milton tag. SR1 really speaks to the need for a hard look at a rapid light rail project using that right of way. Any other comments or questions?
I agree with Dara.
We got a second.
I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, we got a thumbs up by Brian as well on the comment online. So, and I think we have a hand up from Brian. Brian?
Yes, thanks again. Just I guess it's more of a comment regarding the freight corridors. I know Georgetown is particularly impacted by freight corridors, and I think it could be, we would really like to be involved in the, I guess, the update, whenever the next update is of the state freight plan, and just sort of, help increase the quality of life for our residents. So that would be good.
Thanks, Brad.
Making note of that in the room.
Right.
Okay, well,
Yeah, thank
we're going to
you,
go.
Ben, for all.
Yeah, Ben, thank you for that. We're going to go to our last poll question. What transportation issues should we clarify, emphasize, or add to the presentation for the public at the December 2nd public workshop? So this is a little bit of a more difficult question to do via a polling, but if you could just, I think we'll understand by your comment whether you think we should clarify it, emphasize it, or add it. Again, we're going to be going out to the public December 2nd. That hasn't been announced publicly yet, but we will be doing that soon.
And we're happy to take your feedback via email too, but obviously this is a lot. So I know you all do work and outreach every day with your communities, and you all are very patient and diligent and work sitting with us through all these maps. So some version of this presentation is coming to your neighbors and your constituents. We want to make sure that we're being as clear as we can be, and all of your feedback is really critical in making sure that we do so.
I have a question.
Yeah.
And this is just kind
Dick
of,
Trask again.
no, sorry,
That's okay.
Dick Trask, Milton. It's been a few years now, but the bus system in the state put up a place where you could actually drive in, leave your car, and take the bus in through Rehoboth. It's on Route 1. Now, I was wondering if anybody had ever studied the capacity or the impact of that kind of a reduction maybe in some of the traffic. I know it's more of a parking issue in Rehoboth, but
Yeah, so there's two. There's one kind of right at 5 Points, the Lewis Transit Center, and then also further south on 1 at Rehoboth. And Trey or Jared from DTC, would either of you be, I don't know if you all have done any sort of past volume analysis of understanding the impact of those facilities?
We have not. We mainly just look at how many parking spaces we have, and we look at from time to time, especially when there are special events going on, how much parking we're doing, and we calculate that. But looking at it overall to see exactly how we're, helping to mitigate traffic, and especially down to Rehoboth, we have not done a study of that nature.
No, and I think as we brainstorm potential, this is a great teeing us up for our mitigation strategies. I know the rail piece, I know there's a current look going on. Austin, you know the study name, that's actually digging into the rail question.
There's a rail industry land use study that the Dover Kent MPO is conducting
Thank you.
statewide.
Yeah, rail industry land use study is underway already. So I know that has been put out there and is of interest. And also I know BCC, you all have rolled out some microtransit and innovative strategies too in recent years. And this model, because it's definitely car focused, right? It's a legacy product that we are leveraging for new uses, but it is very hard to understand how potentially transit could help mitigate. Now, that's not to say we can't do it, but probably need some new inputs from those other efforts going on to better understand that. Dick, I know one issue with kind of a park and ride more inland is finding a place to have a parking lot that is effective. I know there, as part of the 5 Points study, there was a recommendation that there be more of that, I think along 24 at one point, and you all worked very, very hard to try to find a sympathetic property owner who already has parking or a parcel that would work for such a use, and it did not yield anything. So, you know, this may mean thinking in an innovative way, allocating funding in a way we have not historically to meet problems that are evolving. But you are right that I think we need to be thinking outside the box here.
Yeah,
Hey, Leah, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I used to do a lot of business in Chicago in my career. What's interesting is that Chicago has these rail lines that run from the airport into the downtown area, but they travel along the busy interstate roads that go into the city. You know, you go to lanes here, and the train runs right between.
Passes all the traffic.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and I've used that train so many times, I can't tell you how many. You step out of the hotel, you walk down the street, you get into a train to go to the airport. I mean, something like that, if you put something like up in Newcastle County and it follows Route 1 all the way down to the beach areas, I think it would be a great idea.
Thank you. Andrew, did you have anything to add, or anyone else online interested in
Yeah,
chiming in?
I just wanted to share a few comments that we've received. Steve Breeding, just going back a little bit in our discussion, said the Farm Bureau would like to be included in any freight discussions. And then Dara added, would be great to extend the beach bus north to Milton and Milford to reduce local trips. And kind of building on what you were just talking about, park and rides at Milford and Milton would be great. And that's it for comments until public comment. But why don't we move ahead, Leah, to potential mitigation strategies, which will wrap up our presentation.
Yeah, so yes, we are wrapping up. This is a teaser for meeting 2, so come back for more. But, you know, we're all here to brainstorm and solve problems together. Again, this is not something that DelDOT alone can solve, right? It's going to require a multifaceted approach. So obviously, DelDOT will continue to advance projects and programs that improve safety for all road users. But again, it's not just about improving capacity, right? It's about all those other metrics and all those other things we have to evaluate as we're prioritizing these improvements. So part of that solution is improving transportation options and choice. You know, if we can take car trips that are maybe 1, 2, 3 mile car trips and turn them into a bike ride or a walk, you know, that's not going to fix the problem, but it will take a number of vehicles off the road. It will reduce that traffic. And not everyone's going to make that decision. So there's an example. We do want to expand the network connectivity, right? Because we know if we have a better grid, those major roadways are not going to have as much pressure. So that gets into some of those regional connector ideas, kind of strengthening the, I know it's not a grid down here, it's more of a pile of spaghetti, but we'll say grid. And also, you know, we need to continue to explore, there's optimization you can do at a traffic signal or some of the grade separated intersections that are going in that are not full corridor widenings or new routes as well. So there's lots of little and big things we can do in that space to improve that connectivity and capacity where appropriate. But again, we don't want to get in a situation where we build a wider road and all of a sudden all of our friendly neighborhood developers are all taking up all that extra capacity and getting us back right to where we started. So this has to be very well considered in conjunction with our land use partners.
Scott Collins from
Scott, yes.
County. I wanted to, so this could align with possible interest in evacuation routes and, you know, creating some automation around redirecting traffic all to go northbound, for example. But for some of the routes that are constrained today, I'm wondering, obviously budget's not unlimited, but is there an option instead of full dualization for some of these roads? We evaluated adding a third lane that would facilitate passing and maybe even alternate that lane's use depending on time of day. Something to think about, time of day or maybe the day of the week as well for the seasons where traffic is heavy. Have we looked at that before? I imagine it would be hard to be pulled off possibly and introduce new risks, but might move people more efficiently.
Yeah, Matt, could you speak to how the model can kind of analyze something like that where it's more of a conditional? I know, so the model kind of at this big network level, but we have other tools too. So once we get narrowed into some of this data pulling into the corridor studies, we have other technology that we use for specific intersection evaluation and all of that, which definitely can get at that idea of more nimble 3-lane roadways. I don't know how much the model could be used in that.
There are models that are built for evacuation purposes and analysis. It would probably take a significant amount of reworking everything that you built in one direction. You need to also, have it switch to go in a different direction. Again, you could have a lot of different evacuation scenarios too. But I also think that part of it is a little bit more of a question for Austin and the wider DelDOT team as far as, what those kinds of the technology that would signal, okay, this has now been conditionally as a lane because of, either evacuation or you're saying maybe, or time of day or time of day. You could say, you see a zipper on a bridge sometimes where it's wide, they give more lanes in one direction during one peak period and they bring it over the other way. Could something like that be done in some of our, roadways needing capacity?
It's, they do it on the Bay Bridge, and there are some roads where I've seen it done in Virginia, and I think maybe Maryland as well.
And it's being more conditional is nice in a way because the safety concern too is that when it's not peak and you've got a big wide roadway, people will just fly down it, and then it is very dangerous in that condition. So a lot of things to consider.
Yeah, we're taking notes though, and I think especially the transit and rail piece, wanting to give that a little bit more thought as to how we can address that, both at our next meeting and when we go out to the general public. And right, Darren, now that you've seen all this, we may be kicking your brains too before the next one. So, finally, just to wrap up this slide, we are actively working with the county all the time. They're at our meetings as we bring this data to you, but they will be updating their comprehensive plan. And as I said, expressed a lot of interest in using the types of data that we presented to you all today in future updates to those documents. And also, I think there's an opportunity for all of you who work for municipalities and also have comp plans and want to formulate informed strategies that relate to land use. We'd be happy to talk further about how we can collaborate together. So just to kind of return to our teaser for next time, basically what we're doing is taking the same analysis we just showed you and folding in some of these ideas that came out of the Coastal Corridors Phase 1 study. Right now, this isn't the entire universe of ideas, right? And that rail or transit could play a role in others, but this is what we're looking at right now. So we will be coming back to you with more to explore and are very excited to kind of talk through that with you all as we move forward. So next, we will be documenting all of this. So obviously, I have a lot of maps. Believe me, there's more. We showed 100 slides to you today, and I think there's an extra 25 map slides at the back of this deck. So there's a lot, and I'm sure some of you are looking at this and like, oh, I wish I could know X or Y. Could you run this differently? And as Ben said, we could even weight things differently, right? So if we decide that evacuation routes and flooding are the most important thing to assess, or any number of things, right? All of dials and levers and outputs are different, right? So it's almost scary. Too many decisions to make, but that's why we also are talking to you all, because at the end of the day, Many of you are leaders in your communities, and we have to make determinations about what is important to us and the state, and keeping our transportation network working for us all. So we will be documenting all of this. All that to say, there will be a memo documenting all of our risk assessment and the community engagement we are doing today at our next meeting, and with a public workshop in December. On the way in, you probably saw a purple flyer. We will begin promoting that workshop coming up here with event updates and all of that. So again, would appreciate your help advertising that for us. We do have a pretty big space. We do hope that, you know, sometimes we have these meetings and a depressing amount of people show up. So we'd like to get more folks out. We have put a lot of time and effort into this. So.
I was just about to ask, how much do you really want public input? Because we should try to get, well, you know, I think a lot of our citizens are very, well, they're disheartened with lack of progress in all aspects of what government does to touch their lives. So,
and I fully expect that we'll be told what we show may be a bunch of hooey, you know, and that's okay. But we are doing the best we can with the data we have. And Austin, if you'd like to add to that.
I promise we want the public input now while we're studying and exploring, less so when we've invested lots of time and money into a project that's about to get underway seriously. And the opposition is really extreme. At that point, when we put that much time and money into it, when you develop the concept that heavily, it's really hard to change course on something like that. This is the time for the public engagement to be really robust.
I think our final bullet is amusing in light of this conversation. We want to attempt to build trust, right? We know it's not a done deal, and it's definitely not a done deal for every constituent. But together, we would like to work with you to be as transparent as we can be as transparent about all the priorities we have to weigh and factor into these decisions with limited resources. And we do not know it all, and we cannot fix all the problems. We do not have all the solutions. None of us do. But again, we have to, at some point, make some decisions and move forward and do the best we can with the data we have. So
before you go to the public comment.
Public comment, yes, we have a public comment period.
I just want to add, I want to clarify again, our next meeting of this group is in 2 weeks. There will be different content as we've discussed. Yeah. So it is not a repeat of this, what you just saw. It is new material. Please don't think that it's a repeat of what you just saw and think you shouldn't be here. I do want to clarify that a lot of what you saw today with the model, that is system-wide, regional level work. If you're interested in knowing, you know, oh, there's a particular development here, X, Y, Z, that kind of thing. This does not replace that information that may come out of that process. So please be mindful of what this data does and does not do. Last thing.
Questions about that, ask. We're happy
yes,
to provide
please
insight.
Do. The last thing I'll say is you all are here as stakeholders from different organizations, from different geographic areas throughout the region. You all come here obviously representing your communities and your own priorities and your community's priorities or your organization's priorities, which is important. It's important to frame those priorities in the context of how does the system work at a network level, right? The decisions we make in Ellendale or Lewis affect what happens in Bridgeville and Greenwood and vice versa, right? So while you may have priorities that are crucial to your own community and those are valuable, the point of this exercise is to understand how all of those things work together. And so my point of saying all this is just to prime you and come to our next meeting thinking about that specifically is how do my community priorities, my organization's priorities impact the network, the system level needs that we would need to see on our system. So.
Thanks for that.
Great.
And lastly, go ahead, Andrew.
No, I thought you were coming to me. Finish up before we go to public comment. Oh, you are coming to me. Before we do that, Dara did just say on the comments that she can advertise or publicize the public events on her community website, the Wagamon's West Shore Maintenance Association in Milton. Not sure how many view it, but the notices are posted, and we would certainly appreciate that, Dara, and anyone else using your voices, you know, your channels to get the word out. So thank you. Early on, we had a couple comments from Ian Friedland. Ian stated, if Atlantic Fields gets built on Route 24, that will send your freight network models off the charts. So something to keep in mind. And then Mr. Friedland also asked a question, which is, are overcapacity and fatal injury crash density essentially inversely proportional? So I don't know if we're in a position to respond to that, but Ben, maybe you can be thinking of that while I go to the other a couple other comments. Then I'll come back to you to see if it's worth a response or if it's something we should follow up on. But we had a comment from Norman Jester. He says he lives on and travels Redden Road every day. He sees traffic using all of our country. I don't know if he meant county or country, but roads to try and avoid all of these major roads due to the extra traffic. We need to be mindful and consider some of these higher volume rural roads and how they may be impacted. Number of fatalities has increased on Redden Road in the last few years. Four-way stop signs are actually making it worse because travelers are so impatient. And then we had a comment from E. Lee who asked, where can I get the presentation slides? So I'll ask it a different way. Are these slides, will they be posted on the website?
I'll start there. That's easy. Yes, this presentation will be posted on the project website. We will be sure to send an email to you all with that link so it's convenient in your inbox and you're welcome to share it. And not just the slides, but also a recording of everything we talked about today. So same for next meeting. So if you're not able to make that date time, obviously we have the hybrid option, but also you're welcome to review the video after the fact. And also please spread it if you have colleagues who would be interested. Let them know. Yes.
Keila Atkins, town manager for Ellendale. I don't want to be a Debbie Downer when I make this comment, but there's a lot of comments about railing and taking it to the beach. I want people to remember that the rail was transformed into a walking path and a bike path. So the property that was used for rail is no longer there. So just keep that in mind.
About the Georgetown to Lewis Trail and
keep that in mind, that the railroad that used to exist is not there anymore.
Thank you. One of a few. I know part of that trail is a rail with trail, but the majority of that corridor is now trail only.
Yeah,
It stops in Harbison now.
Yep.
And while the folks in this room might, it's Scott Collins, Planning and Zoning Commission, Sussex County. While this room might be full of people, including myself, who are fans of light rail, that doesn't mean that the people who we would want to use it are necessarily going to use it, even if it were built, which I think we see in a lot of public transit projects, right? I imagine DART buses are probably never at what
Capacity.
Yeah, like what capacity do you typically run at?
Try me a cherry wall dart. I just want to introduce myself. In Sussex County, we don't have a bus at capacity. Not a bus, a trip at any time that we have anything at capacity, except during the summer season when the 201 hits, and that is the bus that runs between the Rehoboth Boardwalk to the Park and Rides. That is the only bus that even remotely may hit capacity, and it's only on certain trips. So with that in mind, and we've actually been talking about BRT and different light rail things for Delaware in general, and we really don't have that type of ridership here. We don't have that. When we look at doing light rail, that is usually in response to overcrowding in other forms of transit. So does it make good economic sense for us to give you a light rail when we have service that no one is using? And that includes our inter-county buses that do limited stops now. They're not at capacity either. So right now, we don't have anything that really supports rail, light rail, BRT at this moment.
For folks who don't know, BRT is bus rapid transit. So that is kind of a bus that functions more like a rail because it has fewer stops and runs on a designated route.
Thank you.
In between.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, I know I'll say something on that and then respond to the other public comment. But, you know, I think that where we see land use scenarios coming in that could be interesting too is if we go for a more compact future, there may be some of the density that supports transit in certain areas and more fixed route, buses. I'm not sure if it would rise to the level of rail demand. I think also the fact that it's so seasonal is probably another reason why a big investment may not make as much sense. But it's something that I think is worth looking at if people want more compact development that's going to be more transit supportive. You can't have a sprawl scenario where everyone is taking a bus from everywhere. It doesn't make sense for transit. On the question that was regarding is there a kind of inverse relationship between capacity needs and safety needs? I think you can make, I wouldn't say that that's certainly true, but I would say that I would be concerned about anytime you're looking at expanding capacity, sort of like what we were saying before, if you widen a road, you've got a lot more capacity, especially on the non-peak times where people are going to see that. And even if the speed limit says it's the lower speed, they see an open highway and they're going to go at highway speeds, right? So that's a dangerous situation. But there's also the opportunity that comes with an improvement. So if you're looking at adding some capacity, sometimes that's just even signal timing and phasing. And addressing a bottleneck, you could also improve crosswalks and you can improve the facilities that lead up to that intersection and make sure that pedestrians and bicyclists can get there, are seen and are safe when they're crossing. So it's not, one, subtracts from the other per se, but you need to be careful about how you treat the situation.
And I know we are, I believe, at time. Andrew, you want to take us home?
Yeah, so again, thanks to everyone. I'm not going to repeat anything that was already said other than we need you. You may not think it, but we believe it. We really do need your role that you're playing in this. So we thank you for being here today, and we look forward to seeing you in a couple weeks and at the workshop. And for those of you who drove to DelDOT for the meeting, drive home safely. Okay, take care, everyone.
Thank you all.